Okay, so now the goals of reconnaissance. What is it we're trying to get out of this phase? Well, there is a huge list. First of all, we're going to go through and look for the type of information that is going to be extremely beneficial for us. And that can be typically divided into a couple of different categories. The first area that I want to find information about is going to be under our network information. And that's going to include things like the domain names, not just, whatever.com, but what are the child domains that they're using? Do they have a child domain that maybe is partners. And here comes my Batman addiction coming out. Partners.WayneEnterprises.com or extranet.WayneEnterprises.com. So we're going to be looking for external domain names. We're also going to be looking for internal domains that they may be using. What did they register? Did they register both WayneEnterprises.com as well as WayneEnterprises.net? And are they both exposed? Well, that might tell me that .com is their external domain name and they may be using .net internally. I also want to go through and try to discover addresses that are being utilized, not just for their website, but they might have VPN connectivity. So who are they getting their IP addresses from? What range, what IP address block are they using? We're also going to want to look at unmonitored and private websites. I don't know how many times I come across companies that have websites that a developer's put up just for testing purposes. No one's monitoring them. Or maybe an employee has posted a website within their internet-facing server. We're also going to want to try to discover TCP and UDP services that are opened up and exposed. Do they have any IDS or what are their access control systems that they're utilizing? Are they supporting, again, the VPN? And if so, can I discover what is their VPN endpoint? Is it a Windows box? Is it a Cisco VPN solution? I also want to try to discover phone numbers. That includes not only analog phone numbers, but also VoIP. The other type of information we want to gather is going to be around the operating systems. I want to try to discover as much information as I can about users and groups, information about those users and groups. How do they do in their name structure for the user accounts? Is it first initial last name? Is it first name dot last name? I may also want to implement some banner grabbing. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. Basically, it's a way of me identifying a system because when I throw certain commands at certain OSs, a Windows box responds one way, a Linux box responds another way. I want to see if I can find out if I can gain access to any of the routing tables so I can see how packets are being routed. I want to take a look and see if SNMP is being utilized. What system architecture are they using throughout their environment? Are they using all the latest and greatest by Microsoft? Do they have a little bit of Novell still out there? Is it 32-bit? Is it 64-bit? Are they supporting remote systems? Not just VPNs. Are they using, Microsoft has a great service called Direct Access, which is their pseudo VPN solution. But do they have remote systems out somewhere? Do they have a kiosk machine out in the hallway? Do they have users that are traveling around with laptops or tablets? Do they support BYOD? That's bring your own device to work, basically. I kind of have a love-hate relationship for that because as an administrator, it's a nightmare for me sometimes. I get it why companies do it because they don't have to go off and buy the tablet for their employee. They get to use their tablet they're already used to. But what happens if they lose that tablet? I also want to try to discover system names. Oh, I love it when IT guys name their server Thor or Zeus or Gandalf. Makes it really easy for me to figure out what the other servers are. Or better yet, I like it when they do it based off of the computer name. Win 2012, and then they also include its purpose. Exchange 1, SharePoint 2, VPN 7, and of course desktop machines are also fun to identify because again, I'm not necessarily after the server right away. If I can get into a desktop machine and if they've named all their desktops based off of Desktop 57 or Marketing 05. Usually they put a name and a number at the end of it as they number it. One of the better ways of handling system names, folks, is serial numbers. However, that's not going to stop me either, because if I can see the computer name and I recognize it as a serial number, I can go to Dell's website, type in the serial number, and find out exactly what's in that machine. Again, the big issue here with hacking, folks, and it's a hard realization to come across, and that is you cannot stop them. Again, as we mentioned previously, in understanding ethical hacking, your job is to slow them down. And by slowing them down, I'm a big fan of misdirection, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. And then, of course, I'm also looking for passwords. Not that the passwords are clear text, but what I really like seeing is when, people have documents or spreadsheets where they've gone through and saved passwords inside of them so they could track them. Yeah, that's good. But I might also want to go through and see, based off of their access control systems, what is the password length they require? Is it 8 characters? Am I going to get lucky with this one because they're under 13 characters, or under 14 characters? Do they require uppercase, lowercase, special characters? We refer to that as the complexity requirements. Then I'm going to move on to looking at organization information. I want to check out the organization's website. Website's going to expose quite a bit of information for me. In fact, I'll be able to pull most of this information off of it, such as the company directory. Why? Because again, end users are your weakest link in your environment. I also want to go through, besides pulling a company directory, I want to pull employee details if I can. I'll find an employee, maybe somebody in the marketing department, get their first name, their last name, see if I can find them on Facebook, start looking at some social networking sites, LinkedIn. See what their likes and dislikes. See if they're complaining about something that they think isn't fair at work. Maybe what's their cat's name, or their first grade teacher's name, or their best friend's name. All that information can be utilized. You can see where I'm going, passwords, right? I also want to gather location details, because location details tells me quite a bit about the company. What's the physical security like? Would I feel comfortable walking into that building and just casing out the joint? Also, did they just recently move? And you may not think that this information comes in handy, but trust me, there's many times I've seen passwords based off of street addresses. So I want to get the location details, which again would include their addresses, different addresses for different branch offices, as well as phone numbers. Why do phone numbers come in handy for me? Well, if I decide to social engineer them and call them up, like I'm looking for a job, or if they have a job posting listed for an admin, I want to call up and ask them information, or I'm thinking about, applying with you. Matter of fact, we'll talk about job sites. It's a treasure trove full of information for us. We'll also want to take a look at the source code for their web pages. See if there's any comments that have been accidentally left in by the developers. See if we can discover their security policies that they've deployed. Have they had any training on how to lock down their systems? Or have they trained their employees how to handle social engineering attacks? I'm going to go through and take a look at different server links, meaning on their website, where are they linking off to as you navigate around, or how are people coming into their server from other websites? This could help me to determine if they've got a partner relationship with another company. Maybe that's going to be my target, their partnering company, which they're going to have some type of a trust relationship or some type of connectivity back to my original target, and I can daisy chain through them. I also want to get a background of that organization. Again, how did they get started? When did they get started? Who were their founding members? What were the struggles of the company when they first started off? Anything that I can find out about the organization is going to help me out. And again, I mentioned before, but we're talking about it again. I'm going to go look at news articles about that company. I'm going to look at press releases that company has issued. And this information, you remember our database we talked about earlier? Well, that's where I'm going to store this information. Again, as an attacker, or I should say from the attacker's perspective, this may not be my only target. I may be targeting multiple companies, and so I need to keep my information straight. Once we've gathered that information, the other thing we want to do is we should be able to start drawing out a blueprint or mapping out the network. Now, I'm not necessarily going to have a complete picture, but I'm at least have an entry points or different entry points that I can make my way in. And eventually, as I get into other phases of hacking, such as scanning, I will be able to pull up a full diagram of their environment. And again, because this may not be my only target, I need to keep my information straight. So I'm going to be looking at, okay, what are my different point of entries to get in? And again, is that point of entry, what OS is there? Again, I'm going to be pulling that information and just giving myself a visual. And technically, that's the footprinting part of reconnaissance.